She married a stranger, an enigmatic CEO, to rescue her crumbling family, and now he loves her like a queen. Fate is unpredictable. Hello, and a very warm welcome to all of you tuning in. I'm your storyteller, James, and I hope today finds you in good spirits. Before we journey into today's tale, let's pause for a heartfelt moment. May peace anchor your soul, may joy knock on your door, and may this story bring light to your heart. I'm always curious, where are you listening from? Drop a comment and share the special corner of the world you're in. Today's story is a beautifully complicated one, packed with emotion, grit, and transformation. You won't want to miss it. It's about a woman's unwavering strength, how life spun her in directions she never foresaw, and how love bloomed in the most unexpected way. Stick with me until the end. This is a story about surviving storms and growing through pain. And remember, subscribe so you never miss a tale like this again. Let's begin. Bella's pulse quickened as she stared at the mountain of bills spread out across the worn kitchen table. Overdue notices, hospital fees for her younger brother, threats of foreclosure. They screamed louder than any words could. Her father, once a proud man who built his business from nothing, sat hunched beside her, weary and worn. His hands trembled as he flipped through paperwork. The color drained from his face after sleepless nights. The sobs of her mother echoed faintly from the next room, as if grief itself had taken residence in their home. What once was a house full of joy now felt like a ship slowly sinking, hope slipping between their fingers. Upstairs, her brother Noah lay weak, his condition slowly draining the life from him. His medicine was all that kept him going, and now, even that was in danger of being taken away. Bella had tried everything, loans, favors, even selling belongings, but nothing had worked. Her heart ached with helplessness. What else could she do? How could she save the people she loved most? Then the phone rang, its shrill tones slicing through the heavy silence. Bella picked it up with trembling hands, anxiety twisting in her gut. The voice on the other end was calm, too calm, a man's voice, deep and unfamiliar. "Miss Bella Montgomery?" he said, his tone clipped and polite, yet distant. "This is she," Bella answered, her voice barely steady. "My name is Daniel Parks. I represent Sam Bings, CEO of Bings Enterprises. He has an offer for you." His words struck like lightning, sharp, cold, and laced with implications Bella couldn't quite grasp. "Mr. Bings has reviewed your circumstances and is prepared to offer a full solution to your financial burdens." Her breath caught in her throat. It sounded too good to be true. Who was this man and why would he care? She looked at her father, pale with despair, and saw something flicker in his eyes. Hope. The voice continued. "Mr. Bings requires something in return. A wife." It was blunt, like a punch to the chest. "Marry him, and he will erase your debts and fund your brother's treatment." Bella's head spun. The weight of such an offer was staggering, too vast to comprehend in one breath. She'd never met this man, never even heard his name before today. Why her? Why this? Yet she couldn't ignore it. Their lives were crumbling, and this proposal could change everything. "There's no long-term obligation," Daniel clarified. "The marriage will last 1 year. After that, you are free." Bella stood motionless, trapped between fear and necessity. A year in exchange for her family's survival. Absurd. But was there any other way? She'd exhausted every option. This was the only open door left. Daniel's tone hardened. "We need a decision today. If you agree, funds will be wired within hours?" Bella's hands shook as she looked into her father's desperate eyes. He didn't need to say anything. She already knew. "What do I have to do?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Details will follow," Daniel said. "You'll meet Mr. Bings today. A lawyer will finalize everything. There will be no second offer, Miss Montgomery. This is your one chance." Bella's pulse thundered in her ears. Marrying a stranger? For money? For survival? It sounded insane. She looked out the window. The last rays of sunlight were disappearing, just like her old life. She nodded slowly. "Okay," she said, her voice trembling, heart aching. "I'll do it." There was silence on the line. Then Daniel's voice returned, crisp and businesslike. "Very well. Prepare to meet Mr. Bings. He hung up. Bella lowered the phone slowly, her hand numb. She turned to her father, who pulled her into his arms, tears streaming down his cheeks. "You've saved us, Bella," he whispered. She held back her own tears, unsure if she'd saved them or just made the biggest mistake of her life. That night she climbed the stairs and paused outside Noah's door, peeking in. His small, fragile frame rested against his pillow, and he gave her a faint smile. Bella entered, kneeling beside him, brushing hair from his pale forehead. "I'll do anything, Noah," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Anything to keep you safe." She pressed a kiss to his brow, sealing her vow with silent courage. She didn't know what was ahead, what kind of man Sam Bings was, what this marriage would demand. But she knew one thing: there was no turning back. Her heart was heavy with fear and sacrifice, but she had to keep moving forward. The next hours moved like a dream. She dressed quietly, her face pale in the mirror. She was about to marry a man whose name she'd only just learned, because she had no other choice. Bella stepped into the courthouse, its sterile chill crawling over her skin. The door thudded closed behind her, echoing like a warning. The hallway stretched ahead, long and empty, as if time itself had stopped to watch. She pushed forward, her heels clicking sharply against the tile, heart hammering in her chest. The room she entered was bare, almost clinical in its coldness. And then she saw him. Sam Bings, standing beside a table, a figure carved from ice. He was tall, clean-cut, with a presence that screamed control. His dark suit fit him like armor, but his eyes, they were steel gray and unreadable, locked on the papers in front of him. He didn't look up, not even when she stepped closer. Bella's breath caught. This was the man who would change her family's fate, and he hadn't even acknowledged her presence. She had expected a cold greeting, but this was Arctic. His face remained unreadable, untouched by emotion. A wall of distance surrounded him. She had no illusion about this being a romantic encounter, but still, this was a wedding. A transaction, yes, but one with life-changing consequences. Couldn't he even look at her? A clerk hovered beside them, glancing between her and Sam, waiting to begin. Bella's nerves rattled inside her, but she moved forward anyway, her resolve growing colder with every step. Sam sat down without a word, his pen poised above the contract. He still didn't meet her eyes. No vows, no promises, just paperwork, dry, binding, and final. "Sign here," he said, voice low, flat, and completely detached. Bella hesitated only a second, then picked up the pen, her fingers trembling. Her name looked foreign as she signed it. Bella Montgomery, now someone else's wife. Every stroke of the pen felt like surrender, but also salvation. Sam barely glanced at her. With one swift movement, he signed his own name. The clerk gathered the documents, nodded once, and stepped away. No one spoke. There were no rings, no joy, only silence. Sam stood, smooth and robotic, taking the papers and tucking them into a leather folder. Bella tried to meet his eyes, searching for something, kindness, even acknowledgement, but found nothing. He didn't even glance her way. His gaze was elsewhere, locked on whatever came next. This wasn't a beginning. It was a transaction stamped and filed. And as she stood there, now a wife, Bella realized she had never felt more alone. It had all been a transaction, nothing more meaningful than a business merger. As Sam turned to leave, Bella stood, unsure of what to do next. The courtroom's sterile chill seeped into her bones, making her feel utterly misplaced in a world so far removed from the warmth and chaos of her family's everyday struggles. Sam had promised to save her family, but he hadn't offered a word of comfort, not even a glance of reassurance. He hadn't treated her like a person, only as a clause in a contract. "Come on!" His voice snapped her from her spiraling thoughts. He was already by the door, back turned, walking away. "We're done here." Numbly, Bella followed him, the weight of his presence pressing down on her like a winter frost. As she trailed behind, questions piled inside her. Why had he needed her so urgently? Why agree to marry someone like her? Just a desperate girl grasping at hope. And why, after everything, did he seem so indifferent, so untouched by it all? She had no answers. Outside, Sam's sleek black car waited. As Bella climbed in beside him, her heart beat with a strange mix of dread and curiosity. Her life had just been upended, legally, irrevocably, and yet she knew almost nothing about the man now called her husband. Sam Bings, the ruthless billionaire, cold as steel, who hadn't even spared her a second glance. The car glided through the iron gates, the city vanishing behind them, replaced by a winding road lined with tall, silent trees. When the mansion finally came into view, Bella's breath caught. It looked more like a fortress than a home. Stone walls, towering columns, windows like watchful eyes. It was nothing like her family's small, cluttered house full of warmth and noise. This place loomed. As they pulled to a stop, Bella stared at the sprawling structure. There was beauty in its design, an almost Gothic elegance, but it was intimidating, cold. The moment they stepped out, the silence swallowed her whole. No neighbors, no traffic, no voices, just the sound of the wind stirring the leaves in the manicured gardens. Sam didn't look at her. He simply walked ahead, his movements sharp, deliberate. Bella hesitated, then followed, her legs heavy. This was her new reality, and it was only now beginning to sink in. The front doors opened automatically. Inside, the foyer was massive. Polished marble floors, glittering chandeliers, towering ceilings. Everything was flawless and silent. No laughter, no warmth. Just the sound of Sam's polished shoes and her hesitant footsteps echoing through the halls. "Welcome to my home," Sam said, voice devoid of emotion. It wasn't a greeting. It was an announcement. Bella glanced around, trying to ground herself in the overwhelming space. The grand staircase, the intricate paintings. Every inch of the mansion screamed wealth, but none of it felt lived in. None of it felt hers. He led her down another vast hallway. Each corridor seemed quieter than the last, the air thick with tension and unspoken rules. "Your room is upstairs," he said. Bella nodded, the word room ringing in her ears. "Not our room." "Your room." They climbed the grand staircase. At the top, he motioned toward a door at the far end of the hall. "This will be your room. I trust you'll be comfortable." Comfortable? The irony stung. Still, she followed, her steps slow. He opened the door, then turned and left without a word. The door clicked shut behind him. Bella stood in the center of the room, staring at her new prison. It was beautiful, yes, spacious, with soaring windows and rich fabrics, a bed fit for royalty. But it was cold, immaculate, lifeless. She sat on the edge of the mattress, her hands trembling. This wasn't a home. It was a gilded cage, and she was alone. As the days passed, the vastness of the mansion became oppressive. Every door she passed seemed to hide something. Some were locked, others were off limits. The staff avoided eye contact when she asked questions, always polite, always evasive. One night, curiosity pulled her to a hidden hallway, barely visible behind a curtain. It was narrow, dimly lit, and at the end, a faint glow spilled from under a closed door. Just as her fingers touched the handle, a voice stopped her. "You're not allowed in the East Wing." Bella turned, startled. A maid stood behind her, hands clasped, face unreadable. But there was something in her eyes. Pity, maybe, or warning. "Why not?" Bella asked softly. The maid hesitated. "It's not for you to know." And with that, she was gone. Bella stared at the door, heart pounding. The East Wing. What was in there? Why the secrecy? Why the fear? That night, the silence was louder than ever. Bella sat in the parlor, hands folded, staring at the antique clock. It was nearly midnight. Sam was away on business. Again. And she was left with nothing but questions. She wandered the halls aimlessly, the emptiness echoing around her. Every locked door, every hushed whisper from the staff. It all pointed to secrets she wasn't meant to uncover. Eventually, she ended up in the kitchen. The air was stale, the remnants of a forgotten meal lingering. She searched the pantry, grabbing a box of expensive crackers, but she barely tasted them. Nothing brought comfort, not the food, not the furniture, not the silence. And then she heard it. A voice, software cracking. Her mother's voice. Bella froze. It was coming through the wall. just faintly, but she recognized it instantly. Her mother was crying. Bella pressed closer, heart aching. Through the door, she could hear the desperation, the pain. Her mother was trying to stay strong, but her voice trembled as she spoke about Bella's father, the medical bills, and the hopelessness of it all. Bella's chest tightened. She had come here to save her family, but hearing her mother's pain like this, it was unbearable. Tears welled in her eyes, but she held them back. She couldn't fall apart. Not now. Not when they still needed her. She closed the door gently, backed into the kitchen, and slid to the floor, her back against the cold cabinetry. The sobs escaped before she could stop them, raw and aching. No one came. No one heard. She was utterly alone. And for the first time since saying, "I do," Bella wondered if she had made the biggest mistake of her life. Bella's face was still streaked with tears when she saw him, Sam, standing in the doorway, watching her silently. His presence was like a shadow, looming but distant, a constant reminder that she was married to a stranger. He had entered so quietly, so subtly, she hadn't even heard him approach. His sharp gaze locked onto her for a long, breathless moment, his face unreadable. But then, only for a heartbeat, his usual cold expression shifted. Something flickered in his eyes, something human, something that cracked the hard shell he always wore. And just as quickly, it was gone. He didn't speak. He didn't ask if she was okay, didn't offer a hand or a word. Instead, he turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing down the hall, loud, final. Bella remained in the kitchen, stunned, suspended in a haze she couldn't explain. She had never been able to read Sam, never understood what lay behind his steely silence. But just then, had he seen her? Had he felt something? Later, after she'd composed herself enough to stand, she went to her room to make tea. That's when she noticed it. At first, it was just a scent, warm and fragrant, drifting through the crack beneath her bedroom door. She frowned and opened it slowly. There, sitting on the floor, was a small ceramic bowl. Steam curled gently from its surface, fragrant with something rich and familiar. Soup, no note, no servant, no explanation. The staff never brought meals to her room, not like this. That was always the kitchen's job. Yet here it was, simple, quiet, a gesture that spoke more than words. Bella stared at the bowl. Part of her wanted to dismiss it, to call it protocol or some misplaced formality. But another part, the one aching for any sign of warmth in this cold mansion, felt something else. Hope, a flicker of care, a trace of kindness. Maybe Sam was colder than she'd assumed, but he had seen her, heard her. It was small, but it was enough. She picked up the bowl, its warmth seeping into her frozen fingers, and sat on the edge of her bed. As she took the first spoonful, something stirred in her chest, a fleeting comfort she hadn't felt since stepping into this house. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to Sam than the distant man she'd married. That night, long after the soup had cooled and the shadows stretched across the mansion's silent halls, Bella sat by her window, unable to sleep. Her thoughts tangled like knots. Her family's debt, the cold marriage she had stepped into, the unbearable silence of the house. But something else gnawed at her now. Something strange. A pull. It started softly. So soft she thought she imagined it. A sound. A melody. The piano. She had heard it before. Just once, days ago. A haunting, beautiful tune that drifted through the halls like a ghost. She'd told herself it was nothing, that her mind was playing tricks. But tonight, she couldn't deny it. It was there, and it was calling her. She rose from the bed, slowly opening her door. The hallway was dim, still. Her bare feet were soundless against the polished floor as she followed the music, drawn by something deeper than curiosity. The melody pulled at her like a thread wrapped around her heart. It led her to the East Wing, the one place Sam had silently marked as forbidden. She had never dared go near it before. His coldness had made it clear. Some rooms were off limits. But tonight the music was irresistible. It beckoned her, a siren song. At the end of the hallway, a set of double doors stood slightly ajar. Light spilled from beneath them in a soft glow. The music stopped, but its echo lingered in the air, trembling like a secret. She pushed the door open. Moonlight poured into the room through tall windows. It illuminated the space in silver and shadow. Against the far wall stood a grand piano, its dark mahogany surface gleaming like glass. And sitting there, with his back to her, was Sam. His shoulders were slightly hunched, hands poised above the keys, frozen in the aftermath of the last note. For a long moment, Bella didn't move. She had never seen him like this. Vulnerable, human. The music had been full of sorrow, aching with memories unspoken. It felt like a window into a soul buried beneath ice. Bella stepped forward, but before she could speak, the air shifted. Sam turned, his eyes locked on hers, sharp, startled, then hard. The softness was gone. "What are you doing here?" he asked, voice low, tense. I heard the music," she whispered. "You're not supposed to be in here." There was no rage in his voice, just something quieter, wounded, like she had trespassed on something sacred. He stood and the chair scraped loudly against the floor. Bella instinctively stepped back, but not from fear of him, from fear of what he might reveal. He moved toward her, his expression unreadable. "I told you," he said again, this time softer. "Don't come in here." A pause, then something flickered in his voice. A tremor. She saw it again. Just for a second. Pain. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. He stared at her, and something in him, something she couldn't name, softened. He turned, walked back to the piano and sat again. But this time, he didn't play. Bella lingered a moment longer, the silence between them louder than any melody. Then quietly she turned and left, the door clicking softly shut behind her. As she made her way back to her room, her thoughts whirled. She had seen behind the mask, a glimpse, enough to know. Sam wasn't just cold. He was hiding. From her, from the world, from himself.
Marcus came back after a few days, but things didn't go back to normal. In fact, the differences between him and Ethan became even more clear. Marcus barely noticed I'd rearranged the living room. Ethan noticed before I said anything. Marcus forgot my birthday dinner. Ethan baked me a cake. The guilt nodded at me. I tried to focus on salvaging my marriage, but every time Marcus brushed me off or chose work over a conversation, I felt the sting of being invisible. And every time Ethan smiled or offered to help, I felt something dangerously close to longing. Then one night it happened. Marcus had gone out with colleagues, and Ethan and I were watching a movie somewhere between laughter and shared glances. His hand brushed against mine, neither of us moved. Then slowly he leaned closer. "Rachel," he whispered, his voice barely audible. I looked at him, torn between everything I knew was right and everything I desperately wanted to feel again. I didn't say a word, but I didn't pull away either. Nothing happened that night, nothing physical at least. But something had already changed. A line had been crossed, even if only emotionally. And that was the part that scared me the most. The next few days were a blur of confusion. I avoided Ethan. I tried to reconnect with Marcus. I told myself it was just a phase, a moment of weakness. But when Ethan finally cornered me in the kitchen and asked what I wanted, I didn't know how to answer. "I don't want to hurt him," I said. "But are you happy?" Ethan asked. And I couldn't lie, I wasn't. That night I lay awake for hours. I thought about who I used to be, the girl who danced in the rain and dreamed of big love, the woman who had settled for quiet dinners alone and conversations that never went beyond "how was work?" The next morning I asked Marcus if we could talk. We sat at the table, the same one where we'd shared 1,000 meals but few real moments in recent years. "I'm not happy," I said gently. "I think we've lost each other." He looked at me like, "Is this about Ethan?" No, it was about us. We talked for hours. He cried, I cried, and for the first time in a long time, we were honest. We decided to split up, not because we were mad, but because it was time to stop pretending. Ethan moved out a few days later to give Marcus and me space to figure things out, and I didn't see him again for weeks. Eventually, Marcus and I filed for divorce. It was respectful and bittersweet because we both knew we had stayed together for too long for the wrong reasons. After a few months of focusing on myself, healing, and finding the things I loved, Ethan finally showed up at my shop. "I waited," he said, "because I didn't want to be the reason you left. I just wanted you to be happy." "I'm getting there," I smiled. "Can I take you out sometime?" I asked. Yes and no. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, it was something better. It was complicated and full of options, but for the first time in years, I felt alive. Because sometimes better doesn't mean perfect. It just means finally choosing what's right for.
She felt heat rise to her cheeks but didn't look away. "Well," she said lightly, trying to cover the wild beat of her heart, "at least now I know how to make you laugh. I'll burn more cakes in your honor." He grinned, a small, crooked grin that changed his whole face. Less stern, more human. "Maybe next year, try cookies." Bella laughed again and gathered the tray. "Deal," she said, her fingers brushing the edge of his desk before she turned to leave. But as she walked away, she heard him call her name softly, just once. "Bella?" She turned. He stood now beside the desk, one hand in his pocket, the other still holding the fork. "Thank you," he said, and the simplicity of the words hit her like soft thunder. "For the worst cake I've ever had, and for making this the first day in a long time that didn't feel heavy." She smiled, her eyes meeting his without flinching. "You're welcome," she said, and left the room. Behind her, the hallway felt warmer. The mansion no longer seemed carved from stone, and in the kitchen, the maids whispered in awe. He laughed. He actually laughed. Bella didn't tell anyone what he said. Some things were better kept inside, blooming in silence like gardens long buried or hearts long locked away, now slowly opening to light. Her eyes were rimmed with red, cheeks wet with rain and tears. "Don't," she whispered. "You don't have to explain." She was right. "I'm nothing more than—" "Stop," he cut in, voice raw. "Don't say another word." She shook her head, stepping back. "You don't owe me anything. You married me out of convenience, to help my family. I was just a name on a paper." He stepped closer. "You think you're just someone? You think I would have brought just anyone into my home, my life? Bella, you're the only one I've ever brought home, the only one I've waited up for, the only voice I hear in the silence." Her tears fell freely now, confusion and hope warring in her eyes. Sam cupped her face gently, reverently. "I married a stranger, Bella, and I fell in love." The words hung in the air, suspended, sacred, like raindrops caught in time. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe it was the soup, maybe the garden, maybe it was when you cried, and I wanted to destroy the world just so you'd smile again. But I do know this. Eleanor was the past. You're everything I never knew I needed." Bella couldn't breathe. Her heart swelled painfully. "Then why the contract? Why the locked doors?" He looked down, ashamed. "I was scared. Of losing. Of trusting. Of loving and being left behind again. But you kept planting roses in a place I thought was dead." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a soaked envelope. Inside, torn pieces of the contract. "No more timelines, no more rules. Just us, if you'll stay." She looked at him. This once cold CEO, now drenched and broken before her, and stepped forward, her arms wrapped around his waist, her face buried in his chest. "I was never leaving for good," she whispered. "I just needed to know if I mattered." He held her tighter. "You matter more than air, more than time." And there, in the middle of a storm that once mirrored their distance, they found something real, something unshakable. Love, unspoken until now, bloomed fully at last. They stood like that for a long time, strangers no more, two hearts finding home in each other. Days later, rain still clung to Bella's coat as she stood beneath the grand archway of the mansion. Her suitcase rested at her feet. She looked up at the familiar door she once fled. The world had shifted in the days she'd been gone. She had shifted. She wasn't the same Bella who ran from shadows and whispers. She was the woman who had been held in the storm, who heard a billionaire confess that loving her was never part of the plan, but happened anyway. Before she could knock, the door opened. Sam stood there, eyes burning, breath caught, as if seeing her knocked all the air from his lungs. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Bella stepped inside. The air around them shimmered with something unspoken. The house, once cold, now exhaled, welcoming her like a soul returned. Sam took her suitcase but never looked away. "I need to show you something," he said, voice low and trembling, with hope. They walked past marble and memory until they stopped at the east wing, the forbidden wing. The doors stood tall, thick with secrets. He unlocked them slowly. Bella stepped inside and gasped. It was a nursery. Time had stopped there, toys untouched, a cradle beneath a bay window, draped in delicate lace, faded wallpaper, moons and stars curling at the corners. Not abandoned, preserved, lovingly, painfully. "She was going to be named Arya," Sam whispered. Bella's breath caught. He stepped to the window, hand resting on the sill like he needed grounding. "My daughter, stillborn. Her mother left the same day. Couldn't handle the grief. Neither could I." He closed his eyes. "That's why I needed a contract. That's why I didn't believe in forever. I didn't want a wife. I wanted a wall." Bella stepped to his side, reached for his hand, his fingers laced with hers, like they were always meant to. "Sam." He turned to her, red-rimmed eyes glowing, not with grief, but something deeper. "But then, you laughed in my house, cried in my kitchen, planted roses in death, and I started to breathe again." Tears streamed down Bella's face. She had come for her family. But this man, shattered and brilliant, had become her home. Sam dropped to one knee. No ring, no fanfare. Just a man, kneeling before the woman who resurrected him. "I'm not proposing, not yet. You deserve a proposal made of stars and symphonies, not broken paths." He looked up, eyes reverent. "But I need to say thank you. You didn't just marry a stranger. You rescued him. You brought light into the darkest wing of this house, into the darkest corners of me." Bella knelt in front of him, cupping his jaw. "I didn't come to save you, Sam. I came because I couldn't stay away." They stayed there in a room once ruled by grief, now silenced by healing. A new beginning. He pressed his forehead to hers. "I love you, Bella." And this time, no shadows rose to stop him. The morning after sunlight filtered through lace curtains, casting golden patterns across silk sheets. Bella stirred, eyes fluttering open to find Sam beside her, dressed in a crisp white shirt and navy slacks, a velvet box in his hand, his gaze anchored on her like she was the air he breathed. "Before anything else today," he said, voice thick with emotion, "I need to ask you something. Not as a businessman, not as the man who married you out of desperation, but as the man who fell, completely, irreversibly, in love with you." He opened the box. No contract. A vow ring, diamond-studded, elegant, soft. "Let's tear up the contract, Bella. Let's rewrite our story, not on paper, but in every sunrise, every nightfall, every heartbeat we share." Together, hand in hand, they walked down the grand staircase. Staff members paused, eyes wide, as the once stone-hearted CEO walked like a man reborn. Sam stopped at the fireplace. The original contract lay folded on the mantel. He picked it up, looked into Bella's eyes, and tore it in half. No more deadlines, no more deals. This marriage belongs to us now. He tossed the pieces into the flames. The past curled and blackened. Gone. Later that day, he blindfolded her, led her into a sleek black car. "Where are we going?" she asked, laughing nervously. "To start forever." The journey wound through cities and into the countryside, where trees arched like cathedrals and wildflowers bowed in the breeze. When they arrived, the scent of roses stole her breath. He removed the blindfold. A villa, perched on a hill, white walls, rose gold trims, and blooms in every corner. "Is this?" she gasped. "You brought life back to my mother's garden," Sam whispered. "I wanted to give you one that never dies." Every room inside held traces of her, photos, books, light. He had rebuilt their journey, not in grief, but in celebration. In the garden's center stood a marble arch woven with roses. Sam took her beneath it, hands trembling, voice shaking. We married for necessity. Then I fell in love without even knowing. But today I vow again, not because I must, but because I choose to love you, honor you, and hold you every day of my life. A quiet ceremony, no guests, no cameras, just two people, two vows. Bella touched his cheek, smiling. You were never the stranger. You were the home I didn't know I was searching for. He kissed her forehead, her lips, and they danced barefoot under fairy lights. You didn't just save your family, he whispered. You saved me. She kissed his cheek. Then let me love you, for every day forward, Sam Bings. Not as duty, but as the choice I'll never stop making. To our beloved viewers and loyal YouTube family, from Bella's first tear to Sam's first smile, from heartbreak to healing, you've been with us. Your presence, your love, your time, it means the world. If this story touched your heart, inspired your soul, or reminded you that love still wins, please subscribe, comment your favorite moment, share it with someone who still believes in love or needs to. Because love isn't an accident, it's destiny, written by a loving God. We close this story in the name of Jesus, who turns ashes into beauty, strangers into soulmates, empty hearts into home. Until the next story, stay in love, stay in faith, stay with us. With all our love, the team behind Bella and Sam's story, subscribe now, because the next chapter could be your miracle. Amen.